now this had killed the market for, of course. So now this had killed the market for, of course.
Good afternoon, everyone that is watching me here on Black Opera Network. My name is INNOSSETU, and of course, we are broadcasting live from Kampala, Uganda. Let me hope Tuesday was good for you, and we happen to land in Wednesday today. Today is, of course, 3rd of July. Today is 3rd of July, and let me hope everything is moving on well. Yeah, for those that are watching me, wherever you're watching me from, that is YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Yes, our topic today is, of course, about African culture and African spirituality. So today we see that African culture, prayer, African culture used to have that sense of African spirituality, but today we see that African culture today doesn't honor spirituality as it used to be, of course, during ancestral ages. But today, when you look at the entire African culture has been manipulated. Even the culture that, of course, that we have, that we normally have confidence that however much Bazungus brought a lot of changes in Africa, brought about a lot of course, they manipulated everything in Africa. At least culture has been, of course, has survived for some years, for some good years. But as years move on, we see that African culture loses that sense of African spirituality. It loses. Yes, yet these things at times move together. Culture and spirituality, they move together. But when you look at African culture, if at all you do or you bring out that sense of spirituality, first of all, the people will look at you as someone who is barbaric, as someone, actually, some people will even call you Baba. And actually, culture losing a meaning to that extent, it has, of course, made it, of course, possible for, of course, for religion, of course, to talk ill about African culture, very many religions, because religions are also cultures. They're also cultures. They're also foreign cultures, and at times they don't align. They don't move together with culture, with the African culture. Yet the same religions, these are religions that, of course, that honor spirituality in their own way. But when you, of course, you honor spirituality in African spirituality, in, of course, in African culture setting, people will look at you as someone who is barbaric, as someone who is, of course, that makes sacrifice, human sacrifice to people. Yet the issue of course, spirituality is a wider, of course, thing in African culture. And if at all you look at staunch African countries that are still believing in African culture, these are people. Uh, Chief Jabba says that, hey, you too, Maria and said to it's 8:48. Over here. I'm checking my feed, and poof, there you are live.
Thank you for joining us. Good job.
Jeba, thank you for joining in as well as 8:48. It is, of course, approaching 9 that side, I guess, this morning. However, this side it is 4 p.m. We already past noon. We're already moving within past noon time. So when we look at, of course, African culture, African practices, African culture practices, cultural norms, cultural tools, cultural beliefs, the entire thing rotates and, of course, goes back to African spirituality. When you look at different countries, India, when you look at India, this is a country that embraces spirituality in their culture, the Indians. When you look at the Chinese, they do the same. Japanese, they do the same. Their culture rotates around spirituality, and it has been preserved. So, and when you, of course, when you talk about African spirituality, in, of course, today in Africa, or when you look at, when you move around in different African countries today, there are those staunch, of course, African countries that are still having that staunch African culture. They don't leave behind the issue of spirituality. That's why we see a lot of people, a lot of celebrities, if I may say, they move to certain countries, certain African countries, where they think African spirituality is still embraced in those areas. So they think that, like those areas, those African countries, they still have that strong African spirituality in their culture, because African culture is almost the same depending on the country. Depending on the country, it is still the same. Actually, there are a lot of things that, of course, that are similar in African culture, depending, irrespective of the country. So we see this thing is, of course, is deteriorating. So the African culture we have learned in school, it doesn't bring out the issue of spirituality. The African culture we have grown up, like people are talking about it, like that is culture, that is culture. They don't show that part of spirituality. That's why actually we have, of course, the modern, of course, era that we are moving in, the new world order, that is the new world order, the new normal that we are moving in, has caused a lot of problems in different African countries, because African spirituality, it accompanied a lot of things, including our society. including the physical features that surrounded us, the lakes, was going back to nature. The mountains, trees, forests, natural forests. But these are things that have been cut down, and of course, the culture is still standing, but on false beliefs and false norms, if I may say. Okay.
Proposed by joining us for the first time. I'm African Maria. Of course, like today's topic goes, it captures it captures the entire Africa's atmosphere, more especially the culture and the spiritual part. Now, in Africa, everything about Africa's culture before to date, before this generation was spiritual. There was a purpose. There was a reason why that particular thing was, of course, carried out or practiced. Though when you still follow the education system of the white man, and which has made it so easy for people to neglect the truth behind African spirituality and the culture that goes along with it, is because if you still Google right now, if you have to get to your Google, you are going to come across a lot of articles, a lot of discussions about African spirituality and culture. But in a nutshell, all these things will be claiming that the entire thing is a myth. It is, someone will say it is a myth. Well, when you look at the entire story, how people are writing about this African spirituality, if you're to attend school and also because they teach about culture, a specific culture in all schools in Africa, the dance and all that, you'll understand that the way how this entire thing is concluded, it like shows that Africa's spirituality and of course culture, spirituality more especially, is the myth, like things don't happen, like it's not true, like stuff is not the way it is. And other people, there is a way they also take it to their own understanding. All right. And some people will say there is a scientific reason to what is happening, that what you people call culture. There is a scientific reason for that. For them, so there is always a lot of things that are out there willing and ready to challenge the African spirituality. And now spirituality is more of a daily life, and culture is more of course, a practice and a way of how people carry out these elements of spirituality. Now, you know, we have seen a lot. We have a few people who are still involving themselves in Africa's spirituality and culture. Um, um, and at times, when you check nowadays, these are the so-called evil people now. And that's why everyone is saying, most people keep on saying money is the root of demon, of evil, and all that and all that. There is a lot that comes along with all that. But you will understand it is very hard to find someone who is strong, spiritually strong, when that person is living in the poverty. It is very hard because these people know what they are supposed to do. These people know how they are supposed to go about different things for them to achieve whatever it is that they want. Now, most people today, first of all, religion has made most of the people to think that African spirituality is indeed evil. But if you have ever been someone who has who understands the laws and the rules that govern spirituality, you will understand that this all the concept of religion was driven from this very practice. Jibjaba says, I was taught you are an animist. finding relevance in trees and other aspects of nature, as if that is to be derided from, but it's acceptable to believe in a make believe man. This was in social studies class. Uh, if you know, you see, it is very hard to know. It is very hard for someone who understands spirituality to be someone who is up against nature. It is very hard because they know everything. Everything you do has a repercussion. There is a reason why you are surrounded by whatever you are surrounded. There is a reason why everything is living here on earth, which is not the norm. Now, I was giving you an example. Um, I don't know with other cultures, but I'm going to connect with my culture, the a bit of the spiritual part of my culture. If you're going to, of course, or of course, if you're going, let me say practice, or if you're going to, let me say maybe you have an altar, because spiritual people have altars where they put all that. For us, when you have altars, something is not gonna miss, like some ancestral, food and stuff and all that on your altar. And then probably is where you of course invoke your ancestors and all that. Now in my culture, if you're doing that, you don't come like the way I am right now. The way I cannot sit in my altar, if at all I am to have one, like the way I am right now. Like I say, I'm coming with my glasses and this dress and all that, and I'm going to do this. No, you cleanse yourself before even you go to that place. And then there are attires you wear. They are in phases, and they all have reasons why. And I can tell you the funniest thing I realized, these are the same things that the priests wear in the Roman Catholic Church. The robe, there is that first in apparently they were like 7 of them. And according to my culture, you still wear 7 of those. Now, this is something that existed before even Catholic came. You put a robe on your waist, you wear the first. I don't know how the Catholics call that, but but they also wear, the priests in the Catholic Church wear 7. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Like I was saying, and if you look at everything about religion, you will understand that there is a lot of similarity, except that most of the people don't really know that whatever it is that they are worshiping or they are following it is not easy for someone to sit. Java. It is not easy for someone to, to of course be to convince someone unless there is a practice that follows. Because honestly, whether we all like it or not, spirituality exists and it is stronger than what people see. I have seen, at times there are things you say, and someone who has never experienced the circumstances, or someone who has never experienced the things, they will say, "No, Maria, that was a coincidence." There is no coincidence. I personally have seen things. I've seen people command things after practicing, after carrying out something in its rightful order. They command even someone who is sleeping. They even invoke your spirit and they start questioning your spirit in your sleep, and you will think you are sleeping. These things are real. There is no science to this thing, except if someone has never experienced this. Someone invokes your spirit, someone even forces you to fall in love with them. They invoke your spirit. If your spirit is so weak, the next time you'll wake up and you don't know. You think it was a dream. I was having this dream and I'm dreaming about probably this guy that we work with. And after 2 days, you see there is a way you're starting to have that connection, a connection with this guy. You are forgetting that dream you had. This person invoked your spirit and they had to negotiate, hmm, with your spirit. And the moment your spirit agrees in that, so these things are real. Why is that kind of situation possible if we never have, if there is no spirituality? There are a lot of things that people usually ignore, honestly. And for me, I believe the reason why most of the people in Africa or Africa is experiencing what it is experiencing right now, we have neglected the pillars that uphold the existence of Africa, because I believe even the Europeans have their pillars, even the Indians, even the Japanese, the Chinese. I believe these people have their sacred pillars that they hold sacred. These are things that each one of them knows. In Africa, you'll even come across someone who doesn't even believe there is spirituality, someone who even doesn't believe about anything. You understand? But the truth is, if we knew, now we are going to look at, we are talking about culture and spirituality. The culture that does not honor spirituality in Africa. We are going to look at marriage. I usually talk about this thing. We have got marriage ceremonies. People always talk about dowry. And people always talk about, we always see those marriages that we always go like, wow, the dances and all these dances that are being actually practiced during your marriage festival are actually dance circular music dances, whatever your best dances of your best choice. The music you play is of your best choice. You'll even find someone is playing a music of the Western people in the traditional marriage, because now it is a world, it is an English world where people speak English. You have to be, of course, for you to be a corporate person, you should understand the corporate music. And when we are to categorize corporate music in Africa, it is not African music, it is the Western music that we call corporate. Now, if I told you to have a corporate occasion, we're going to play corporate music, you're having corporate guests, you're having, yeah, you are forgetting the elements and the reason why you're marrying someone's daughter, or the reason why someone's daughter is marrying someone's son. And you're calling it a traditional, a cultural marriage, where you have even not practiced anything apart from the cultural food, I guess. And even in some other places, you will not see the cultural food. So you see, when this entire thing is a spiritual thing. That is why people of long ago knew if you go and make all these spiritual agreements with the man or a woman, there is a way those people are tied together beyond the human realm to the spiritual realm. That is why those women long ago had the potential to do a lot of things, that people nowadays cannot even do. Even the men nowadays cannot do. Now, even plus the women, all right? Because for them, they knew the value. During African spirituality, like in marriages, you don't cook any food. There was food that was particularly made for that day. There was a type of food that was particular. There was a type of alcohol that was particularly made for that day. You don't drink any alcohol, no matter how expensive. Now, that alcohol, let me ask you, in Uganda, and I think elsewhere, because a traditional alcohol is cheaper than all these things you get. Now, African alcohol being cheap, the traditional or cultural alcohol that Africans used to take while invoking the spirits and all that is cheap even nowadays, that everyone can afford and every household can make. Now, for it being this and this cheap and accessible, everyone doesn't want to have it during their ceremonies or during the time when they are carrying out their, of course, they have to buy expensive beers, Tasca, Guinness, whatever, tequila, wine, and all that to, I guess, to put to display on the table and show. It is important nowadays for us to show the people who are seeing how, people really mind a lot about what people see and what people think about them. And this is why you have seen really when a lot of things are not working for us. We are not doing everything. Actually, everything that is being practiced now in Africa is not being practiced in its right way. It is not being practiced in its right way. You'll find even someone, they cannot even speak their ancestral language. Now, before even your ancestors passed, they even don't know the kind of language you are speaking. How are you going to invoke them? Are they going to listen? Are they going to understand? You are using probably English and, I'm in my altar now, I'm going to pray to my ancestors. With your altar, you're praying to the ancestors that who never spoke your English. Who don't even know your English. And probably maybe you have grown in another place, a place which speaks another different language, and then you still have that and you want to invoke in that language. That kind of thing can only work when it is not about your personal issues. Probably maybe when when you're talking to nature or when you want to connect with nature, they also have a language that connects with nature. Not any language that you are going to speak. Now, we have lost value, and our culture has lost the spirituality aspect of it. And when there is not that concept or the content of spirituality in Africa's culture or the Black people's culture, you will understand that there is no use. There is absolutely no use for you to practice something that has lost its spiritual aspect. Because why are you practicing it? We always do things the way we do them because we want to have an effect of what we are doing. If we did not want to have that thing work out, if you don't want to have of course the come out of that, we wouldn't be doing whatever it is. For example, I want to eat food because I want to get satisfied. I'm going to work because I need money. If you would go to work and not get money, we would not be going for work. If eating would not make you feel satisfied, you wouldn't be. What is the purpose of you sitting and eating if you're not going to enjoy the food and also get satisfied? If we do these things because there is a reason why, and always that reason is for us to have the results. Now, if we are carrying out the culture, everyone praises Africa has a diverse culture. When this very culture has lost this spiritual touch, there is no purpose of us practicing this because it has no value. And now this is the genesis of everything. This is the beginning of Africa's doom, I should say. Because as much as I told you, I was telling you about the Roman Catholic Church. Jibjaba says, my mom, yep, everything is upside down over here too. Jibjaba says, my mama did it and her mama did it and her mama did it, so I do it. Exactly, Jibjaba. And there is a way these things give us peace. There is a way it gives you peace. And you know, people who practice the things, they always have a bit of, they always behave differently from the rest of the society. Because for them, through this, they know their purpose. All right. Now, we have seen, I was giving you the example of the Roman Catholic Church and the priests and those robes and the gowns and everything they wear. When the priest is still in the sacristy, right behind there. I come from a family that was a Catholic, all right? So I know how this thing goes. When the priest is behind the sacristy, they wear, so I'll call them clothes. I cannot start, maybe I first check and get to know how they are named, but they are usually 7. There's one that they first put inside, and then they tie, and then they put and they throw another on top, and then another, and then another. There are 7 of them actually, plus the one they usually throw here last. This is a spiritual aspect of them, and all the attires they wear before they go to, of course, conduct a mass has a reason. It stands for something in the Roman Catholic religion. Now, the something I was even asking myself, why is it that we also wear 7? In our culture, when you are going to the altar or if you are going to invoke the spirit, you wear 7 clothes, and they are all in different, and each of them have their purpose. And you are only to find that the priests in the Catholic Church still wear the same. When we are in the Catholic Church, there is always I don't know, I'm forgetting how they go. Pine. There is they always use that mature pine. It brings out there is a particular part from a pine, I think it's a pine tree, or I don't know how they call that tree, that even the Catholic Church usually uses before, when they are starting the mass, and they will make it, they will smoke it, it will be smoking as the altar boys, maybe the priest or whoever is leading the church will be, it is they'll be, shaking it, and the smoke will be going everywhere. Have you guys also noticed that people who carry out spirituality usually use the same elements to smoke? And actually, from this is where people, even from this same thing, people get like what would they, sometimes people call them blessed candle, not wax candles, because there are some other types of candles that people usually use during their altar. This is the very thing even other people use, the African spirituality. Some of them use that to burn. Okay, if there is something like bad energy, they have to use it to burn or smoke the entire place with that. And the same thing, I realized that, yeah, Jimmy Jama says, yeah, that's smoking on a chain. Yes, yes. And in spirituality, even before you start invoking, you smoke. They come in different types. They come in different types. Now, I want people to understand before even you start insulting Africa's spirituality, before even you start saying that spirituality is evil and whatever it is that you do, because for you, you guys do this, yet the exact practices that people are carrying out are things that they actually, of course, like India, like Indians burning incense. Yes, like Indians. All right. So we do this thing, even in African spirituality. Elsewhere, you learn before even, yeah, there it is. That's more. They put in different Jamaicans and they put in different. They put in different herbs. They put on different things for different purposes. And most of the Catholic, what they put on, they put in there is a tree. There is a certain tree that brings that smell. It smells, and in African spirituality, more especially, like let me say in Uganda, I don't know other places, even if someone has been attacked by some evil, like if someone gets like evil, or if you feel like there is a lot of bad energy in your house, or things are not moving on well, let me assure, all the time you see you're getting angry for no reason, somebody has not done anything, you see, people, children are fighting all the time. There is always a reason why there is always that bad energy. And you'll see that a lot of spiritualists in Africa, before even they woke up, they burn it. There is nothing like I'm burning to harm anyone around me. You don't burn it to harm or to do shit. You just clean it, cleans the environment. It cleans the environment. Now, these are things that African spiritualists do. But when it is being done by a black man who is not an ordained priest or who is not a pastor, it is called evil. If it is being done by a normal man and you decide to say, before I open my shop, I'm definitely going to ban this, probably to chase away bad energy and all that, I'm telling you, my brothers, seriously, evil is real, bad energy is real, and things are real. If you have never experienced these things, you will never understand. There are things that are real. You see, when culture, when tradition came, it took, at times people shy away from saying the truth. Jibjaba says that smoke induced the spirits to appear. He says, thanks for cleansing. Yeah, it does that cleansing and also spells away the evil spirits, the spirits that are not in connection with what you want. Because the truth to be told, the spirits are everywhere. We may be seated here when when spirits are even around. All right, but we don't see them. Okay. But when you do this, you cleanse. How do you cleanse the area? Whatever spirit that is not in, of course, in unity with what you want. Native Americans do the same, smoke, they purify an environment. Yes. So these are things that are normal. But if now they are being seen, if someone sees me, Maria, waking up on my door now, and I start smoking that thing, everyone's gonna say she has become a witch. Maria has become a witch. Do you know that lady smokes shit all the time in the morning? But they go to church and they are always, at times, even if the priest doesn't do that, they question, why didn't we see the priest smoking in the church? But I'm smoking my house. And you call that evil. So there is always, there is always, by the way, growing up, there are a lot of mistakes we do, unknowing things that most of us commit unknowingly. And at times, by the time we realize, it becomes a little bit hard for us to, but there is solutions to apparently a lot of things that we even experience. When you're desperate for an answer, or if you're going through a lot and you're so desperate, at times you end up doing a lot of things and a lot of wrong things. And there are people who understand this game who usually want to take advantage of those people who are desperate. We know that we still have some people who are conducting churches, and all they do is to invoke and carry out spiritualism in the African aspect, according to their culture. All right. This is why when you go to church, really, they're going to ask, there is what they call a prayer request. When you're doing a prayer request, you indicate your name. You don't just put this prayer request like you wake up one time and you write a note without address and reference and all that. The major reason why when people are doing prayer requests with these, let me say, these churches, they are going to ask for your name. They want to know how to invoke and how to do this. They will ask your name. You put in what you want, all right, and whatever. And if you look at all these requirements, are just things that will help them guide and will help them to know how to tackle. But people hardly let the society know about this because they are losing business. If you let Maria know that, if you let, what's that? If you let me know, all purpose, okay, clean. No. Spreading of clean an environment. Now we spread like so. Yeah, true. Now, the reason why most of these people are secretive about this is because if I get to know how they are helping me, that means they're not going to have clients coming around. Someone said, "I'll do something you're going to take. I'm going to give you some oil." They're giving you rosemary. They are giving you a lot of spiritual oils, because we have oils that work for different things. Oils that you're going to put on your head if you're having headache, and you will heal. There are oils that are going to cleanse your entire body. There are oils that are going to cleanse your mind. And these are the things people be selling. Things you should be creating on your own. And they know the moment they tell you tomorrow you're not coming to church, because the major reason why really people go to these places is for them to have answers. It's for them to have change. People hardly think about heaven when they are going to churches. It is not about the heaven that they tell us. It's because they're going through a lot and they're looking for a shoulder to lean on, and they're looking for solutions. All right? They are looking for solutions. Some of us churches want to see your tax return. Some accepting a prayer request. Yeah. So through all these things, if you get to understand that, all right, I'm Maria and I'm this and that, we have solutions to apparently a lot of things. Me, I told you something. I have seen things that may look weird if you are not someone who understands how, and at times I wonder how powerful people are. But it is just that these people, one thing they have learned about themselves is they have learned how to handle their spirits. Now, let me tell you, when we are to pray, when you're praying, or if you are of course, invoking the spirits of your ancestors. Usually, these were once people. They understand you, they know you. Probably even some of them are you are doing exactly what they've ever done before, and they know where it is going to lead you are. And at times, these people are human beings, were once human beings. These are spirits that even someone can command it to do something else. You see, that is why, we have also seen people doing a lot of other evil things through that stem, but that is how they decided to handle the spiritual part. I have seen, seriously, it is at times people who don't really understand this are people who don't, it becomes easy. It becomes easy for you to believe that I believe in a certain religion. It gives you that comfort, honestly, because I've seen some people believing in some religions and giving them some comfort, but at times there are things that happen to them and they neglect them. I'm someone, usually, I'm someone who will sleep and I hardly dream about things. But when I sleep and dream about something, there is a reason why. Now that is me. I don't dream about things anyhow. I might look at it and let it. It might even be something just not important, but there is always a reason why. And whenever I dream, there is, you know, I believe with me, I believe there is a communication. Unfortunately, I'm not yet, I've not reached that level of understanding what to do with my dreams and what to do, I guess, seriously, or what to do with, what is going on. You know, as a person, I didn't really know this for a very long time, but I kept on, some things used to happen like after 3 days. I see the exactly thing I had in that dream is happening. And I'm like, why is it like this? And sometimes I may be like, if I'm so sad about something and I'm questioning myself, when probably I'm alone and I will sleep and it's like someone will tell me whatever questions I've been having. And I'm not someone who knows like apparently a lot of herbs or what to do. But I may sleep and I dream someone. I don't know all my ancestors or my relatives, but I may dream someone taking me somewhere in the wilderness and someone saying, Maria, pick that and pick the other. And you boil that and take it. And I wake up and I'm like, why? I'm not even sick. And after 2 days, I'm sick. And then I'm like, okay, but I don't know how they call that thing I'm supposed to be picking. So that means there is something I'm yet to understand. And I know if I experience this kind of life, I believe there are a lot of people who still experience the same. All right. So spirituality is really, really important. And Africa has its culture for a purpose. Like I said, if at all we are practicing marriage and it does not have the spiritual content, why should we do the traditional marriage? If you really don't know why, because we have also seen women who just all they want is to, guys, I want just someone to traditionally marry me so that my OGs at school can see that someone has married me, so that the entire village can see that the someone's daughter has been married. They are not even getting married for the reason of staying in that marriage or for the love. And someone say, yeah, yeah, for this one is coming fast and he has money. He has even promised that in 2 months' time he's going to marry me. And for you are still working, you're still looking for money. I'm going with this one who is coming now. Now, this is what is happening. But if people knew the true essence or the spiritual part of these practices that we carry out, the naming ceremonies, you don't just wake up one time in Africa and then boom, you name. there is a ceremony that comes along, because usually these names, the African names that are given to African children, are names of their forefathers, right? These are names of their great fathers. Now, for you to name this child, of course, you have to please those people who had those names. And there is a lot that comes with it. Because you can decide to name your child. You give your child your ancestral name, and you don't even, your ancestor was a drunkard. Maybe if she's a woman, she was barren. She's not to have kids. All right. And you name your child. Okay. But if you make the right rituals, that person will have known the pain they have ever went through, not being able to have whatever it is that they never had. And I can promise you, they protect that child and make sure whatever mistake they made, this child doesn't make. And make sure whatever things harmed them, this child does not cross them. That is the reason why people have naming ceremonies, where people are going to celebrate. You give a meal to the ancestors, and of course to please whoever had that name that you're naming your child. But nowadays, no, they are naming, we have a cake, we have even friends who are not even part of the family come into the house. They even don't know the person, and you're just naming. You even don't care who the person was. You are naming, and boom, it is all about, yeah, we have done the naming ceremony. Nigerians take naming ceremonies seriously. At least these are people have seen take naming ceremonies very, very seriously. I think most of the people in the western part of Africa do. In my culture, naming ceremony is extremely very important. But because modernity has come, the only thing they do is baptize. You take you to the church, the priest with your monkey name or whatever name, they're going to give you your cat's name, and then they are done. People no longer. Why is it important for the Catholic Church to baptize your child with their name? Now you think it is so important for Rome, but not important for your forefathers. The Rome that when you may die without even reaching. All right. But why is it important that you take your child now? I'm taking my child to the pastor. I'm taking my child to whatever church. That your child should be named. But it is not important for you to invoke the spirits of those people you are naming your child after. This is where everything goes wrong. This is where everything apparently goes wrong. Now, these are the cultural practices that we do that have lost the spiritual meaning. You decide to take your child to baptize, and the moment they baptize, and someone's going to say, yeah, my baptized name is Maria, this is why they baptized me. Yeah, the other first name is not important because the priest baptized me that. All right? Because the priest baptized me that. There are lots of things. Nowadays, you see people going through, we are experiencing, it is very funny for someone to say that Africa, people are going hungry. You go hungry, yet you have the best climate ever. How is that even possible? You say you're going hungry, yet you have the best fertile soil for growing food. What? You are not following the right. You are not invoking the right spirits. Before we had the people pray, okay? Before even you put a seed in the soil, you are supposed to invoke the spirits. You're supposed to pray to nature and for the soil to accept whatever it is that you are putting in there. And this is how it works. But now you can imagine, I'm telling you, I told you I come from a Catholic family, a family that is filled with Catholic. My my family, some of them pray in the Catholic Church and all that. They even have in Catholic religion, there is a saint of good yield. You can Google that. It is there. There is a saint of good yield, a warrior if you are going to battle, if you are going to war. There is a saint you pray to. All right? I may be speaking about African spirituality and yeah, that is so stupid. Now let's talk about what the Mzungu brought, because I know most people love to listen to that. There is a saint, a warrior saint that you're supposed to pray to if at all you want to win victory in a war. There is a saint of good yield. There is a saint of health if you are sick, and in a particular kind of diseases. There is a saint of fertility. Sorry about that. Like I was telling you guys, there is a saint. So you'll understand that this church, for them, they know there is a patriot of fertility, good marriage, wisdom. If at all you have a child who's not smart enough, they say you can pray to that patriot or that saint and your child. Good vision, good eyesight. And if you want to be a good artist, they have all the packages of those things. But most of these people are white. Some of them are Italians, some of them are Spanish, some of them are Mexicans, but basically most of them are Italians. The people you're supposed to pray to. But when it comes to your African spirituality, they tell you we have had a great warrior throughout the African history, untouchable man, that if you want to be that, you pray to that man, invoke the spirit of that man. You have to research and get to know what did this person love most? What did they love to drink? What did they prefer to eat? So that you give them their favorite and we invoke their spirit. The moment they thought that who is invoking an African spirit, and you rather go and invoke a Mexican man. All right. Now this is the problem most of the Africans are experiencing. The fact that we don't want to accept that every culture, every place in this world, they have their cultural and their spiritual aspects. And it is only Africa that has refused to accept that, you know.
So when we look at, of course, African culture versus African spirituality today, um, we see that indigenous spiritualities among Africans, both in Africa and in diaspora, are flourishing. In Lagos, Nigeria, for example, shrines compete with the churches and mosques in the errands and positions. So beyond Africa, the rise of African spirituality has become conspicuous. Reasons, of course, range from Afrocentrism to anti-religious tendencies to the popular religions, from racial, of course, animosity to, of course, political, economical ideologies. Uh, Yet insufficient attention is being paid to these new Afro-spiritualities that we see in Africa. So can this resilience, of course, renaissance in African spirituality bring forth or support renaissance in Africa? We see that Africa, of course, arguably domesticates the future of humanity from ecological perspectives to productivity of offsprings, from economic potentials to viable youths for the future. Africa, of course, must become progressively discursive uh, in the global platform. A good way is to encroach in the world, in this world, be, of course, understanding the spirit of Africa. In the traditional spiritualities that are constructed um, oriented that are constructed orientations and worldly views of the people understanding and addressing African spirituality constitute an important key in understanding African identity. So if at all we can't identify as Africans, we can't identify ourselves as we, it is going to be very hard for us, for Africans, to understand African spirituality at all, of course, concepts. Um, Africa, of course, is the birthplace of humanity, and of course, has always been a melting pot of diverse cultures, languages, and beliefs. Despite centuries of external influences and the spread of the global religions, the essence of traditional African spirituality still prevails, offering profound, of course, uh, uh, insights into the lives of our ancestors. We see that when we talk about the roots of African spirituality is in all is of course an all encompassing term that refers to various indigenous religious beliefs and practices found throughout the African continent. Although each ethnic group possesses its unique spiritual traditions, certain commonalities exist, like I said at first, such as the strong connection to nature, ancestral reverence, and the use of rituals for healing and growth. At the core of African spirituality lies the belief in the supreme being, who often takes a less active role in the daily lives of people. Instead, the focus is on lesser deities, ancestors, and spirits who directly interact with the living. The essence entities we see that these entities play a crucial role in providing guidance, protection, and support, ensuring the harmony between humans and the natural world. So, when we talk about the ancestral reverence cycle, before actually we go to that, we see that African spirituality uh, it relates with growth, with nature, how, of course, human beings that are living on earth, how they relate with nature, and of course, their ancestors. Ancestors, these were people that lived before we lived. These are people that lived before we lived. They lived on this earth. They went through different kinds of life when before we. So we came through those people. So we couldn't live if those people did not live right. So ancestral reverence and the cycle of life we see that ancestral ancestors hold a central place in the traditional African spirituality, with many cultures believing that the deceased continue to influence the living. It is believed that the spirits of ancestors can provide wisdom, healing, and protection, and thus they are honored and respected in various ways. Rituals, ceremonies, and offerings are common practices to communicate with ancestors and maintain a strong connection. So these rituals often involve music, traditional music, or spiritual music, dance, and the use of sacred objects which symbolize the link between the physical or living humans and the spiritual realms. So the healing and of course the divination practices in African cultures and spirituality, we see that African spirituality is deeply rooted in healing and personal growth, with various traditional methods employed to help individual or individuals achieve balance and harmony. Divination, for example, is common practice that involves seeking guidance from the spirit world to address various life challenges like wars, like diseases, relationships, among others. So, traditional healers, of course, are all diviners, known by different names like Sangoma, Babaloa, and of course in Ghana play a vital role in the communities, in African communities. And these individuals possesses unique skills in interpreting messages, dreams from the spirit world, and are often sought for their wisdom and guidance. They also employ a range of methods such as herbal remedies, prayers, and rituals to promote health and well-being. The power of course, community. We see that community is a fundamental aspect of African spirituality, with many practices emphasizing the connectedness of all life, the holistic worldview that encourages a deep respect for environment, understanding the humans are part of the larger ecosystem. So communal ceremonies and celebrations serve as means to strengthen social bonds and maintain harmony within the community. And these events often involve storytelling, dancing, music, enabling people to express gratitude and respect for shared spiritual journey. In simple terms, traditional African spirituality offers wealth of wisdom and insights that can enrich our understanding of the human experience by exploring these ancestral beliefs and practices. We can, of course, appreciate the depth of spirituality that has shaped the lives of countless generations, fostering sense of connection and unity across African continent. However, we see less, of course, ownership, less appreciation and acceptance to this, of course, African spirituality. When we look at, of course, almost everything that is done on this world, it has that aspect of course, ancestral beliefs or African spirituality or ownership. And actually, Africa could be respected um, so much. Actually, the world outside Africa would respect Africa so much because Africa is the center, is actually the origin of human being and the ecosystem. So everything that belongs here, and for me, I normally say that however much Africans are forgetting about their identity, they don't know about their identity, but the Wazungus have not forgotten how Africans looked alike, how Africans believed, how Africans used to live, how Africans used to survive. in their communities. As we see a lot of things happening, forgetting of what to do and when to do it and how to do it in Africa, the Bazungus, they are copying it, they're making a photocopy of it in their own view. Because um, African spirituality, it doesn't, of course, like we don't mean that the Africans within Africa, they are the people that, of course, that should honor this African spirituality. Even Africans that are outside Africa, because your ancestors still follow you wherever you're going. They still have a touch in whatever that you're doing. A lot of people are doing things today, but not knowing these things have ever been done by someone. Today, when we look at ceremonies, different activities that we are doing in Africa, starting from, of course, because it starts with giving birth, child naming stuff, all these things have been modernized and have been manipulated. So a lot of mistakes have been done. A lot of mistakes have been done starting from the process of creating a human being. Because there are a lot of things that used to be followed in African spirituality. There are a lot of things that used to be followed. If at all there are a lot of things that used to be followed, procedures that used to be followed by our ancestors. If at all you're going to give birth, if at all you want to have a child, if at all that child now has come into existence, how that child could be, of course, passing through this entire life of the living. Because our ancestors are now living in, of course, what we call the spirit life, in the spirit world. So uh, they went through, of course, this life that we are living in, and they could be acting as guidelines, as guides to what we are going through today. But due to the fact that African spirituality is not given chance, it's not respected, is not, of course, honored in very many cultures today, we see a lot of mistakes being done. We see how people are making mistakes in whatever things that they are doing. Let them be businesses, because even our ancestors used to do business. They used to do their barter trade. They used to do a lot of businesses within communities. But we see a lot of people finding hardships in life, reason being, however much you have respected the African culture, but have you honored that spiritualism? Because there are a lot of people who will tell you, for me, I love my culture, I put on my culture attire, but things concerning spirituality, I'm a born again, I'm a Muslim. Because African spirituality, believe it or not, it is competing with existing religions that we are having in Africa today. There is a lot of competition between African culture, for African spirituality, with the religions that we are having today. A lot of religions will tell you that you have to chase that, of course, hereditary spirit that was born with you, which you don't know, that is making you to make mistakes, that is making you barren, that is making you to, of course, to do robbery, that is making you to, of course, to fall into a lot of problems, that is making you poor. Yet they're just mistakes that are being done in African, of course, cultures, in African spirituality, that make people to suffer the way they are suffering today. And religions, they just confuse everything. They just make everything worse for people. So people end up sleeping in churches. Yet these people, the same pastors that we are having, they are the same people that invoke the same spirits of these people. They respect these spirits, but they don't, of course, make people, they don't give a chance to people to understand, of course, this kind of life, this kind of African spirituality. And we can never and never understand our identity if at all we can't embrace African culture with spirituality, because they can't separate it, they can't be parallel. African culture move along with African spirituality. There is something that accompanies a certain practice in African culture, something that accompanies something in African culture. So a lot of respect should be given, a lot of attention should be given to, of course, African spirituality. If at all we hope to see, we hope to seek, of course, wisdom, and we hope to see a lot happening within African, of course, spirituality and African culture. So when we look at the word religion, of course, is a problematic for many Africans, because it suggests that the religion is separate from other aspects of other culture. So society or environment, but for many Africans, religion can never be separated from all this. It is a way of life, and it can never be separated from the public sphere. So religion informs everything in the traditional African society, including political art, marriage, health, and diet, race, economics, and death. And that's why, of course, religion manipulates African culture. People think religion is wider. And if this is not to say that indigenous African spirituality represents a form of course, religion or totalitarianism. We see that African spirituality simply acknowledges the beliefs and practices touch on and inform every facet of human life. Therefore, African religion or African spirituality cannot be separated from everyday life of people in Africa. So African spirituality is truly holistic. For example, sickness in indigenous African worldview is not only in imbalance all of the body, but also an imbalance in one's social life, which can be linked to breakdown on one's kinship and family relations, or even one's relationship with one's ancestors. Though we are seeing a lot of theories that are talking about the cause, the origin of certain diseases in African communities, but there are certain symbols that used to happen in African communities, and it could be actually a sign of the upcoming event. Let it be famine, let it be a breakdown in, of course, in a relationship, let it be maybe you're having a family. It is a sign of any upcoming event. Let it be floods. For me, when I was growing up, they used to tell us there are these, there are certain insects, they are called soldier ants, I guess. They are called soldier ants. Soldier ants. Yeah, they are called soldier ants. They are called soldiers. So whenever you could see, of course, a soldier ants coming somewhere, they could be representing famine. In my culture, whenever we could see like soldier ants, actually soldier ants normally come during rainy season, and if you see them in sunny, they could represent famine, that famine is coming. Actually, a lot of things that were any in African spirituality, anything that is not in upright form that happens, it represents something bigger that is yet to happen. If at all you having someone who interprets spirituality, who is good at interpreting African spirituality, if at all there are certain dreams that someone is dreaming about, and he gets a good dream interpreter in African setting or in African spirituality, they represent a certain things that that either existed or is yet to happen in the near future. So a lot of things that are happening that are not, of course, given uh, uh, um, time for interpretation. So when we see the role of ancestors in African, of course, spirituality or cosmology has always been significant. Ancestors can offer advice and bestow good fortune and honor to the living dependents. But they can also make demands such as insisting that their shrines be properly maintained and, of course, propagated. And if these shrines are not properly cared for by the designated descendants, then misfortune in the form of illness might befall the caretaker. A belief in ancestors also testifies to the inclusive nature of traditional African spirituality by positioning that deceased progenitors still play a role in their lives and descendants. So, um, so, African, of course, spirituality or African indigenous religion is, of course, dynamic, of course, and of course flexible. We see that the pluralistic nature of African tradition, religion, or spirituality is one of the reasons for its success in the diaspora. African spirituality has always been able to adapt to change and allow itself to absorb the wisdom and views of other religions. So, much more than, for example, Christianity and Islam, while Islam and Christianity tend to be uh, overly resistant to adopting traditional African religion ideas and practices. African religions have always accommodated other beliefs. For example, an African, of course, amulet might have insight of it in a written verse where we see that the Quran and the Bible, the idea is that the traditional African practitioner who constructed that amulet believes in the efficacy of other faiths and other religions. There is no conflict in his mind between his, of course, traditional African spirituality and another faith. So all the religions that we see today in the world, for me, I see it is just uh, it is just a copy, like something that has been copied, like something that has been copied from African, of course, religion, African indigenous religion, African spirituality. And like I said, African spirituality moves hand in hand with, of course, African culture. If at all you don't believe in African culture, you don't embrace African culture, you cannot see, you cannot have that third eye to embrace African spirituality because it has a lot, there are a lot of things that accompanies African spirituality in Africa. And when we look at uh, there are a lot of things that, of course, that we lose as we Africans, whether in diaspora or within African continent, if at all we, of course, if at all we don't honor or we don't embrace African religions or African spirituality, like I'm saying, because African religion is all about African spirituality. So if we lose traditional African religions, we would also lose or continue to seriously undermine the African practice of rites of passage, such as the much cherished age grade initiations, which have for so long integrated and brought Africans together under a common understanding or worldview. Worldview. So these initiation rituals, are already not as common in Africa as they were only 50 years ago. Yet age grade initiation have always helped younger Africans feel connected to their community and their past. They have also fostered a greater feeling of individual self-worth by acknowledging important milestones in one's life, including becoming an adult or an elder. So, in a lieu of these traditional African ways of defining oneself, Christianity and Islam are gradually creating a social identity in Africa that cuts across these indigenous, of course, African religious and of course social identities. They do this by having Africans increasingly identify themselves as either Muslims or Christians, thus denying their unique African worldview that has always viewed, as evidenced in the creation myths, everything as unified and connected to the land, the place where one's clan, lineage, and people were cosmically birthed. So foreign religions simply don't have that same connection to African continent, just like African spirituality.
You know, like I said, there are a lot of things that, of course, uh, a lot of us do nowadays, and we believe this could be the probably we believe these are the right things to do. Um, but when you still follow, you'll understand that the way people live today is extremely different from how Africans used to live years ago. And despite of us having um, modernity, development, or whatever, we lack that sense of unification. We lack that strong relationship that we had towards each other. We lack that love that we heard. And today, everything is changing in every day, today's life, that we are beginning to accept that it is a one-on-one survival. We no longer rely on each other. We no longer, not even family, all right? And if at all there is someone doing that, they are doing that for their own views, okay? Others maybe are doing that to earn, others are even maybe doing that for their own selfish interests. Okay, so we have experienced this kind of Africa nowadays that is extremely selfish, and this wasn't the Africa before. Okay, and it is a little bit unfortunate, actually, for it is unfortunate that most of us are neglecting the truth. I'm gonna give this as an example. We have a lot of people, and before even I reach there, we have a lot of people wanting to there is a lot of people nowadays out there who want knowledge, because it is not normal for someone not to want knowledge, but we want knowledge from the wrong people. And there are a lot of knowledge scammers out there. There are a lot of people pretending to know a lot. So they are giving out information and in a wrong way. And unfortunately, people are getting and using this information. Okay. We have got a lot of people claiming for us we train children to do this. People have come with different um, organizations, of course, where they are doing that. We are having this kind of people that are actually practicing different things, but trying to inform, educate, and most of these are doing this for the major aspect that is, of course, on nowadays, that aspect of money. Okay, so for example, in Africa years ago, we had initiation, someone going into adult, and someone, of course, joining elderly. We had relatives or family members or clan members that would teach their children their responsibilities. You know, now you can even wake up and marry or get married to someone even who doesn't really know what to do. They don't know what to do about the entire thing. All they know is that when I get married, we are going to be having sex, we're going to be having children, but and probably I'm supposed to go and work, I bring money so that the children will go to school, and also they're supposed to be eating. These are the things that a lot of people think that they are supposed to do, because a lot of people are less informed about the entire institution. Why do you join that institution? What to expect there? How you should overcome challenges in that particular institution. And now we are seeing different people. You know, whether we like it or not, blood is usually thicker than water. You are going to look at something, you are going to see that in some families, you will find that there are a lot of characters that are quite similar. No matter how different people may be or may look, but when these people are a little bit similar. Now I'm having someone who is coming from a different entire family, and they don't even carry themselves the way I do. Probably maybe their temper is not as mine. They don't even, they are far, far different from me, and you are getting this person to train your child. Most of these people train according to experiences, what they have been through, what they have seen, what they have also been taught. All right, and last time I was telling you guys that we have got cultures that are extremely naturally, they are violent cultures. Example, okay, where that if at all even you are to have a normal conversation with someone, you still be questioning like, are we fighting? Why does she talk like that? Why is he barking at me like that? And for some other people, it is normal. And actually, if you find that that culture is like that, when they're around each other, they think it is okay. In where I come from, when someone is talking, one has to listen. It is just normal. You cannot see two people having a conversation and one is not giving the other a break. Where I come from, when you're talking, you talk in intervals. You say something and another one says, after you're done, someone says something, and when you're done, another one. That's how we communicate. Now, I know of some people where there will be, if there are six of them, everyone is talking. And they're okay with it, and they understand each other. And they will talk non-stop and they understand each other. And someone's talking, and the other one is also rapping. And usually they are talking very fast in their language. At times, so we have got those people settled around our area, and you'll always see people from my culture, they'll be like, they talk like birds. When like people have gone to that stream, they cannot even listen to each other because for them it is new. It is new for two people to be talking at the same time. And for those other people, it is fine. All right. It is fine for them to talk the way they do. And actually, it is okay. And at times, we'll see them talk energetically, rapidly, and you'll be like, because you don't even hear what they are saying, and you'll be questioning whether they are quarreling, whether they are about to fight. But at the end of it all, you see them laughing out loud, and you're like, oh, they are okay. Right? Now, this is them, and that is how they do things. Now, we've got, if you're not trained to understand these things, at times it takes you time to associate or live around these people and not to be so judgmental and not to be affected. We have got some cultures where actually it is cultures that are emotionally selfish. For you, it is important for someone to respect your emotions, and it is not important for you to respect someone else's emotions. And for their culture, it is perfectly fine. I think first come, first serve. And we've got some cultures where apparently everyone is emotional in everything. So these are the things. Now, if we are to live in an environment where people don't get to know, where someone is exposed to such an diverse, experience or diverse kind of environment, and they don't know what goes around, or probably you have even not married, because before we had people, more especially those people who had the potential to marry more than one woman. Before even you marry, the woman is told about the culture where she's coming at. It was the responsibility of the sister to the brother to make sure that she understands the culture where her daughter or her brother's daughter is going to get married to. And the same thing with the man. The man was also told, you're taking Maria, her culture is like this. This is what they usually do. So if you see Maria doing something like this, you shouldn't wonder or stuff like that. So by the time these people would come to an agreement, there is always that understanding that has been given to them before they carry out this particular, the particular thing that they are doing, whether it is marriage or a relationship bond. Because in Africa, even we had the bonds that when people used to bond spiritually. Someone comes and say, appreciate the friendship you have, and say from today our relationship is going to go beyond friends to brotherhood. And in this brotherhood, we are becoming brothers. And by the way, you will find that those relationships were even bigger than blood relation, than the brotherhood of direct, of paternal, maternal kind of relationship, where people would make oath. They make oath. Yeah, some others would cut themselves and they join their blood. This is something that you will see as very funny. But at the end of the day, whoever would cut that, whoever will break that oath, things would never go well with them. Someone wakes up one time and says, apparently, we are going into a relationship. I love you, you love me, I love you. When you're very sure of the love you have for each other, and then someone decides and says, now, probably there is something you want for the other person to be satisfied that you're not going to, or of course, break the promises, and maybe the person is going to invest in this relationship more than you. Someone says, we are going to make an oath that we are going to be together, we are going to be friends forever. And if you are not willing to make that oath, we cannot, because I don't want to be lied to. Now, if there is that much mutual connection, of course, someone would say, yeah, and they carry out the rituals of the bonding. And these were some of the rituals that people used to do in marriages, in African tradition. You promise you're going to stay with someone, and you promise that a lot of things actually, and whoever would break that promise, it was not only a bond between you and that physical person you are having, but you are bonding with the entire generation, the entire lineage of that particular person. That is when you do those rituals. That means that that's when those people's marriages at times they would even prosper, because at times the union is beyond two people. It goes beyond to even the people we don't see, to the spirits that even see things before we see them. The bond that goes beyond to people who can fight for us even when we don't know. You don't know that your man is going to be doing some shit, and the spirits, because this man made a bond, they are supposed to protect that person. They are supposed to protect both of you towards winning and making sure that whatever it is that you have is successful. These are the things that we don't see important, but we always have questions. Why is everything apparently going wrong? The only success that Africans look at nowadays is the education aspect of it all, but yet we have a lot of unemployment. At times you'd even want to use your certificate to clean the house and, of course, collect rubbish, because it has no value. We spend education in Africa is even extremely expensive. You spend a lot of money in school, at the end of the day to get nothing. If you cannot employ yourself, at the end of the day you gain nothing. Everyone's family, they are trying to train their children to work in their companies, and for you, you are going to school to learn to work in someone's company. That person who is training their children to come and work in his or her own company, that means you're not going to be the first priority. Their children are going to. Because we don't really understand. And we have neglected the most important things. And you see, at times, a lot of people know. But you know, as parents have a lot of big role to play in their children's life. Because you may reach a certain age where you know that I'm supposed to be doing this, but the foundation that was given to you by your parents, when it is extremely wrong, And it may not even take you to change that, except you probably maybe to change the foundation of your children. But for you, you just decide and say, I've sacrificed that. No, I'm not going to achieve this, probably. And if you are going to achieve it, it's going to take a long time and it needs patience. But what foundation have you laid? Now, in African tradition, I'm going to say, I'm going to connect this with a little bit of a religion. In both religions, they usually, in African tradition, they say when a child is 7 years, when a child clocks 7, when a child has seen 7 moons, sorry, when a child has seen 7 moon happen, that's apparently when the child has seen, when the child is like, has been on earth for something like 7 years. That child is believed to be a child who is ready for grooming. That's when a child is going to be taught. In African tradition, that's when a child is given a small drum. That's when a child is given a spear. That's when a child is given a bow and an arrow. That's when a child is believed now. This child's mind is ready for grooming. And it's believed if a child is below that age, even if a child is punished, praised, adored, whatever thing you do for this child, or whatever imitation this child sees and imitates, they are just imitating, but they don't know why. They don't really know why they are doing. You may tell them after cooking, after you eat your meal, you have to thank mom because she has cooked. So every child, because for us, every child knows. So when a child is like 1 year and the child is the age of speaking, they will even come and say, thank you for cooking, mom. But I don't know the reason why they are saying that word. A child, you will train a little child, you say, all right, when you want to do in the morning, you have to come and say good morning. They will say it good morning because it's okay for you. Even in the evening, it may even say good morning. Because when they see you, they have to say it. But they don't know the real concept, why they are doing whatever it is they are doing. Now, in African society, they say when a child is like 7 years, it is believed that this child at that age can differentiate. You can tell these children what to do. You can tell them they can understand that, all right, so I greet my mom because I need to know how she's doing. I greet my dad because I need to know how his night was. And it is also my duty. It is a sign of respect. So, more especially, the word respect comes last. But the things that are very important are the duties that this thing upholds. Now, so when children used to reach that age, then they will be trained to understand. A child will be told the stories that they would live and never forget. It's when a child is going to be groomed to a man. But of course, nowadays, everything. And sorry, I said I'm going to compare these things I'm going to compare these very things to religion. The same thing, if you are going to study, if you are going for Holy Communion, if you are going to other things in a Catholic church, there is a certain age where your child cannot study those things, even if you think your child is very smart. Now you can see the connection of these things and the African spirituality and the African culture education. These are Roman people who made these laws. These laws came from Rome, the ones that we see in Catholic Church. But they will still tell you this child is too young to come and study catechism. This child, if maybe unless if you are keeping the child around there just to to keep on learning or to do stuff. But the true basic is there is a certain age, and more especially it is usually like 7. It's when the child, because at that time they will teach the child everything, and the child will know why the child is learning what he or she is learning. Now these are things that we really forget. You find that a child is grown, all right, and children don't even know a lot of stuff that really go around. They don't really know a lot of things that happen. There are some children who don't even know that. There are some African children that don't even know that apart from my father, my mother, and probably my siblings, there are other relatives out there. Children don't know that apart from my dad, my mom, my sisters, and my brothers, I have a grandmother or I have a grandfather. There are children in Africa who don't even know that apart from this house we live in the city, we also have the other house, the very house that raised your father. They don't know it. That we have the other house, and we have got these other people that grew up with dad, the people that grew up with mom. You are not letting those children bond with these people, and you expect them at a certain time to love them or to have that respect or whatever it is. So there is a certain there is a story that it is a real story. I experienced this. It is a little bit funny, but again heartbreaking. And actually, this taught me something. And huh. So I was teaching in a certain school. I was in my vacation, so I got a job and I was teaching in a certain school. And in that school, um, the owner of that school was a Muslim man, and he was he was coming from our ancestral side. So he had, being a Muslim man, he had like 4 wives, I think, yeah. And all the wives had businesses and in different places. But now this first wife is the one who was staying around the school premises because they had their main house next to our school. So it was a flat school. You had stairs, you'd go up in other different schools and all that. So I had a bond with the little children. He had his other young children who were also attending some lower classes. And, I usually used to come over there sometimes that weekend. And, I stay around with those kids and with school. So the children knew me uh, because during the weekends I used to teach candidate classes. Now, one day I was actually coming, it was like evening time, afternoon. I saw the kids running. They call me Teacher Maria. Teacher Maria. I was like, okay, what is it now? They all ran and they hid behind my back. So I was like, what's going on? What is this? So they said, there is a vampire in the dining room. It's like, are you serious? There is a vampire in the house. So I was like, what is wrong with those children? Now, their father wasn't around. Their house was big. I think their granny came when they are in class. They didn't know. They had never seen a woman with gray hair before. And being Muslims, remember, they were in a community where women cover. Because their mom was a grown up. I know their mom was in the age of having gray hair. Okay? But maybe her hair wasn't so gray like the ones of their grand, because their father was a grown up man and their mother. So this, sorry, and their first, the mother, the wife, the first wife, because for them, their mothers, I think they were younger, being these other women. So maybe they had not seen a woman remove a veil on the head before, and they had, even if they had seen people with no veils, there were young people around. Those were their sisters and probably their mothers were young. But it was the granny, the mother of their dad. So she had this long hair and it was gray. And being old, she had some missing teeth in her mouth. And when she saw the grandchildren, she was excited. I guess she gave them a smile. She had removed her veil on the head and excitedly waiting to hug. The children just ran away and hid behind my back, and they were crying, "There is a vampire in the house." Now you can imagine your son calling your mother a vampire. How embarrassing. And it was not these children's fault, really, because I had never seen such a person before. So it wasn't their fault. That means for all that long, this man had never taken these children to see their grandmother. They were just seeing this person in that age. They had never gone up country to visit. They even didn't know there is a certain human being. You know, we know movies of vampires where we see all the vampires with gray hair and whatever. So as much as the situation was painful, I blamed the parent for not letting the children get to see their grandparent, to know that apart from the people we live with, we have other important people out there. Now, these are the things. Me actually growing up, I used to fear old people. I'm sorry. Because my grandmother wasn't all that old. When I was growing up, my grandmother she did not even have gray hair. Except my granddad, and my granddad, I think his skin was extremely light and he did not have much hair. I think he used to shave his hair. So I didn't see much of the gray part. But each time we would go to the village or to the countryside, and maybe I've been sent at the shop and I meet a line. I don't know where these old people would be coming from. Maybe coming from village meetings, I don't know. Whenever I would meet them, I would run and hide in the bush. I squat down. If there is a tree, I would squat now. I'm not afraid of the snakes. I wouldn't be afraid of anything I would to encounter in that bush. But all I was afraid of is those old people I would see. Not because I think they are vampires or something, but in my mind I knew they are witches. There are people who do a lot of juju. And at times I will lie when I've tied my finger. I say, maybe they are going, but I had never seen someone who has ever died. I didn't know even how people fall sick through the black magic or whatever evil thing. But I had the stories. So this is the fear that religion had instilled in people. This is the fear. I had that fear. I don't say maybe they are going to eat me. Maybe these old people are going to do something bad if they see me. You start working with it. And I would greet them not because I want to, but because I want to please them so that they shouldn't harm me. And I'll be greeting every person and it's hello, hello, hello. If there are 20, I must greet all of them. Not because I want, but I want to, at least they should like me and not hurt me. Why? This is the fear that was installed apparently in the young children growing up, more especially those who grew up in the cities, in the big towns. But yes, that is life, and that is how it has been designed. So you can imagine you are fearing your own. The people are speaking the same language. Now tell me, how are you going to fear those who look like you but speak a different language? Which will still bring us to tribalism. This whole thing starts in a very small way, but it engulfs extremely larger minds of people. So the grooming, the education, that moment where parents used to sit every evening and talk to their children and tell them stories, great stories, is no more. Every evening, children sit on a TV, and we as parents, we get our phones. And the day ends and the morning comes in, to the point that you even fall sick, and the children don't really care whether you are sick or not, you know, because they don't know. They don't know. Now technology has taken that. We have given our children out to the world for the world to train them, to teach them. When we are growing up, whenever we used to visit the countryside, there was always a reason why. And at times, growing up in the township, I usually I at times I hated going to the village. Not but one thing I loved about the village was the socializing. There was that unique socializing that each time whenever the moon would appear at night, we would throw a mat. We wouldn't eat from the house. We would throw a mat down there. And after everyone has had a bath, you sit right under the moon with no lights. We don't have any light. It is the moon, because the moon at times was usually bright. Then they start tell you, they get some grown-ups to start telling you stories. When your other elders, they are at times also seated somewhere doing other things. Storytelling. If it is the time for the elders, they come in, they tell you stories about the neighbors. Did you hear that? Let's tell you about what happens in the western part of Uganda, in the northern part, in the southern, in the central. Did you hear of this tribe? And you would like, they would impart knowledge in us, all right, at that time. And when time comes, at times I think people would even sit until midnight unknowingly. I don't know. But of course, like little ones would doze off, they start carrying one by one, they take you to where you're going to sleep. Okay. But these are the things that I liked, about the village, because these are the things that we use to talk about. They tell you new stories that you know nothing about. Though some of them would be scaring, but they would be so interesting. Others would be mind blowing. Others would be so educational, and that was that. Nowadays we don't have that. Parents enter in the house when the children are sleeping, and they leave before even the children wake up. Before even the children wake up. There is a school I used to go to here to, of course, I used to do a small business with a certain school. There are some children I used like to look at, and I'm like, do these children leave home when the parents have seen them? Because a child coming when they're extremely dirty, extremely, you would, when it's a Monday, you would even think, did they just pick the shoe or the sweater, whatever it is they are wearing, from the rubbish pit, from the dustbin? Was this clothes in the mud? And these children usually had money to eat something at the cafeteria, but they were extremely dirty until until I called, and at times I'll be smelling urine like they wait on the bed. So I called her and said, but where is your mom? He said, my mom works in the market. And your dad? Yeah, my dad also works in the market. So you don't see your parents, and we don't see our parents, but every morning they leave 1,000 on the table. So these people don't even know whether their children wash their uniform or they have spent the night in their uniform or something, because they are always at work. They go to work, they leave very early in the morning, and they go to the market, and the children also wake up when the parents are not there. They head to school. They come back, stay around when the parents have not come back yet. The children go to bed. The parents come when the children have gone to bed. That wasn't the African system before now. Because first of all, raising a child wasn't a personal issue. It was communal. You can understand if it was the African before now, you would understand, you would realize that even these children wouldn't even go hungry. Even their uniforms would be washed because everyone would be around to see. Nowadays, that is impossible. So we are lacking that training. We are lacking that training of our young generation, the young people. Of course, most of them don't even know what is going around and why what is happening is happening. They even don't know their ancestors. They even don't know even their living relatives. They don't even know their papas. All right, those are those important things that a child should know. Most of them don't know.
So the other factors that, of course, that are contributing to, of course, why, of course, African culture today doesn't, of course, honor spirituality. The other factor, apart from, of course, colonialism, tribalism, and religion, is the issue of the issue I said the issue of course, education system. The education system is also another factor that, of course, that has made African, of course, culture to lose value or to lose the essence of African spirituality. There are a lot of books that have talked about African culture in another perspective, of which most of the African written history is not, of course, written by Africans. And actually, that is, of course, if I may say, that is one thing the people that came to Africa during those days that stole for actually, they stole the entire thing from Africa. They considered Africa to be a place that, of course, had nothing at all. They scripted, of course, they scripted things that are not in Africa. There is a way they scripted the African culture, how it must be and how it is right about now today. The education system is, of course, another disturbing factor that is making African culture to flourish wherever it is. When you look at different schools, the schools that we would see that we actually would embrace African culture, schools that could talk about African spirituality. These are schools that are founded by their own religious basis. These are missionary schools that have been introduced that were introduced by missionaries. These are schools that are introduced by the church. There is no way they are going to embrace spirituality or African culture within these schools. These are schools that go to mosques. These are schools that go to churches that are ever praying. However, there is something we used to have. Actually, I'm one of the people that went through, of course, missionary schools. In missionary schools, there are normally competitions that are called education week. Like a theme is sent from Rome to Africa about like actually particularly in Uganda because I studied in Uganda. So a theme is of course drafted by Rome. There are even songs, Catholic songs that are sent from Rome, of which school-going children in those missionary schools should practice in these competitions. There is no other songs you bring in other stuffs. You don't bring in other stuffs like African songs, African culture stuff. You don't bring in stuffs. Stuffs must be scripted by Rome and sent to Africa for Africans to follow and do competitions, which something, of course, that is also, of course, causing African culture to flourish because, like, kids grow up knowing someone becomes an adult when he can even argue out things. He can't argue out things that are not important, that are in religion. Someone doesn't know about African culture, the real African culture, about like besides understanding the native language, and very many of the people actually they can speak some little native language, but I know that people that are fluent in English, in French, and other foreign languages. But you find someone like she has been saying that like you find someone doesn't know his father, his or grandma. Someone doesn't know that family tree and all those people. He doesn't know them. Now, how will this person be able to understand the ancestors? There is no way. There is no way. So that is how education system, of course, has caused problems. We know that African spirituality is a holistic concept deeply rooted in the historical, culture, and religious heritage of Africa. So it encompasses a wide range of beliefs, practices, and traditions, including reverence from ancestral spirits. While large religions like Christianity and Islam have made African, of course, spirituality to separate because it is really competing with the religion. African spirituality is competing with religion. I see a lot of religious readers banning shrines, traditional shrines. I see a lot of so I was saying the religion today in Africa, it is competing with of course with African spirituality. I've seen a lot of sheikhs. They are called the sheikhs. I've seen a lot of sheikhs. I've seen a lot of pastors burning shrines. Yet in African spirituality, there was a symbol where, like, actually, African spirituality is a larger thing. First of all, there must be a person. There must be a specific person to whom those ancestors should speak or I don't know whether I'm speaking something that is understandable. Because for me, I believe in this. For me, I believe in African spirituality, and we have it at our home. We strongly believe in it. Not the side of my mom. My mom is so religious. I mean, in our real home, like where my father, where my grandparents were born, live. But there must be, of course, a house where these ancestors have been existing in this house. They are the people. They are the same. So they are the same people that built this house. It is this house that has been, of course, existing in different generations. So their tools, their symbols, their objects that are respected in African spirituality, that are taken so important, that are taken so serious, and they must also be respected in this manner. So if at all we can see a lot of churches today coming out, a lot of prophets, priests, sheikhs banning these um, sorry guys for that short inconvenience, but the culture of Africa is of course varied and of course manifold, consisting of a mixture of countries with various tribes depicting their unique characteristic and trait from the continent of Africa. It is a product of diverse populations that inhabit the continent of Africa and the African diaspora. Generally, culture can be defined as a collective mass of distinctive qualities belonging to a certain group of people in Africa. These qualities include the laws that are governing culture, morals that are followed in culture, beliefs, what you believe. That this is where African spirituality comes in, knowledge, art, custom, and other attributes belonging to a member of the African society. So culture is the way of life of a group of people. So, so Africa has numerous ethnic nationalities today, all with varying qualities such as the language, dishes, greetings, dressing, and dances. However, each of the regions of Africa share a series of dominant cultural traits which distinguish various African regional cultures from each other and the rest of the world. For example, social values, religion, morals, political values, economic, and of course, aesthetic values all contribute to various African cultures. Expression of culture are abundant within Africa, with large amounts of cultural diversity being found not only across different countries, but also within single countries. Even though within various regions the cultures are widely diverse, they are also, when closely studied, seen to have many similarities. For example, the morals they uphold, their love and respect for their culture, as well as the strong respect they hold for aged and the important. For example, kings and the chiefs. So Africa has influenced and been influenced by other continents. So this can be portrayed in the willingness to adapt to the ever-changing modern world rather than staying rooted in the static culture. The westernized few, persuaded by by the American culture and Christianity, first denied African traditional culture, but with the increase of African nationalism. So a cultural recovery occurred. The governments of most African nations encouraged national dance, some to smaller extent musical groups, museums, and to a lower degree, artists and writers. So we see that 90 to 95% of Africa's cultural heritage is held outside Africa by large museums. And this is also actually affecting Africa. Like I see like where is the essence now? If at all like the largest cultural heritage of Africa is of course is kept in large museums that are outside Africa. So it means our culture was stolen, our culture was manipulated. So it is important. It is also important to note that in a quote from, of course, the British Broadcasting Corporation (BBC) that on African culture, that a recent study of the Foresight Factory on defining factors identity (PPT) to 60% of the British Black African or Caribbean respondents agreed that ethnicity played a key role. So the largest of any group, the singular viewpoint of the black as an identifier or an ethnicity not only denies cultural differences between the population, it also denies the nouns within the vastly diverse community. So when we attempt to define African culture and identity, we have to be mindful that we are viewing a broad ethnicity comprising different sub-communities that are resistant to having their heritage and culture boxed in simplistic labels. So African cultures, which originated on the continent of Africa, have several distinct differences that the black culture, which of course originated by African Americans in the United States after they were stripped of, of most of their own African cultures during enslavement. Some differences are that African cultures retain tribal affairs to only to warn during specific events, had the carvings, tribal masks, and dances, whereas black culture is ethnic to African Americans, such as hip hop, jazz, harboning, and soul food, though some Africanism were retained in black culture of the United States. Most of the black American culture and history was created by black Americans. So the same retained the Africanism and also created cultural differences and can be noticed and noted in the Caribbean cultures from the descendants of the enslaved, as well as the differences, and can be noticed and noted. Of course, like I said, it can be noted in the Caribbean cultures from the descendants of the enslaved, as well as in the Black South Americans cultures, such as the culturally different expressions, food styles, and language due to centuries separation and enslavement away from the African continent, being formed uniquely in places like Bahia and Brazil. So when we see that Africa is divided into a great number of ethnic cultures, the continent's cultural regeneration has also been an integral aspect of the post-independence nation building on the continent, with a recognition of the need to harness the cultural resources of Africa to enrich the process of education, requiring the creation of an enabling environment in several ways. In recent times, the call for much greater emphasis on the cultural dimensions in the aspects of development has become increasingly vocal. During the Roman colonization of the North Africa, for example, parts of Algeria, Libya, Egypt, and the whole of Tunisia, provinces such as the Tripolitania became major producers of food for the Republic of the Empire. So this generated much wealth in places for their 400 years of occupation. So during colonialism in Africa, Europeans possessed, of course, attitudes of superiority and a sense of mission. So the French accepted an African as French if Europeans, of course, if that person gave up their African culture and adopted French ways. So knowledge of Portuguese language and the culture and of course, and abandonment of traditional African ways define one as civilized. So Kenyan social, we see that for Kenya, we see that the future of Africa can only be forged from accepting and amending the social culture present. So we see that colonial cultural hangovers, uh, pervasive Western culture, of course, inundation, and aid giving, arms twisting like donors. We see that all these stay and no amount of looking to Africans first will make them go away. So when we look at African culture during colonial period, for you to be considered as someone who is civilized, you had to drop your culture. You had to identify yourself as a French in Africa. That's why actually those French people used the assimilation policy, so they could use Africans like you cut that hairstyles for the French, you dress like French, and of course you mop their offices, you behave like French. So it showed during that time as someone who is modernized during that time. When you talk as African arts and crafts, Africa has a rich traditional arts and crafts. African arts and crafts find expression in a variety of wood carvings, brass, and leather artworks. African arts and crafts also include sculpture, paintings, pottery, ceremonial, and religious headgear, dress, and of course the dress code. And of course, actually, we see that all the arts, all the arts we see in Africa, these are things that are tangible. That's why African history prior was not written. It was not written. It was in physical form, and actually that's why African history is still, of course, fighting for survival. Is still fighting survival. It can't deteriorate for good because it was in physical form. When we look at the paintings, when we look at the dressing code, when we look at the arts, the sculptures, all these are physical things that can be looked up to. So I guess where did these people that wrote African history, where did they get it from? The African history that they wrote, which is fake. So um, the folklore and of course the religion in we see that like all human cultures, African folk and religion of course represents a variety of social faces of the various cultures in Africa, like almost all civilizations and cultures. Blood meats have been circulating in different parts of Africa, so culture and religion share space and are deeply intertwined in African cultures. In Ethiopia, so Christianity and Islam form the core aspects of Ethiopian culture and of course in form of dietary customs and rituals and of course rites. So we see that there are a lot of folk tales in African, of course, culture and African history that I can't even mention and complete now. There are a lot of course, African attires, women traditional clothes like in Ethiopia, in East Africa, among other. countries. Africa has also, of course, what we call the pushine of the African Great Lakes region that varies from area to area. In the inland savanna, the traditional pushine of the cattle keeping peoples. So, because like in East Africa, even in West Africa, we have those people that are basically into cattle keeping, and it is culture that their culture, of course, respects cattle keeping, and there are cultures that we know that respect cultivation. So, when we see that we also have, of course, African music, we have African languages, which are very many, and we also have Africans that are in diaspora. I don't know how, of course, African in diaspora. I don't know more much about the Africans in USA, Africans in UK. So, how, of course, I don't know much about their cultures and how they behave. Do they behave like Bazungu? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe Jibijaba will help me in this. If at all is online, if at all is watching right about now.